Cary Valentine. I'm going to be your instructor for the next 4 weeks in our online class here. And I welcome you. And I want to start you off on the first week's forum here by kind of describing some ideas that you've read about in the first 3 chapters of the book by now. The textbook is, of course, Cobb's Leading Project Teams right here. So hopefully you got the right book. A very good book. It's going to get in a lot more specifics that you need to know about, but we'll try to unpack this so that it's something digestible that we can actually use after we're done with this this little project we have in our class in the next 4 weeks. When you hear academics and organizational scientists talk about project management, you'll often hear them cite examples in ancient history like the Great Pyramids of Gaza maybe, or the Great Wall of China. That's a real common one, and even more modern things that have been accomplished, projects like the Eiffel Tower or the Airbus 380, the huge commercial airjet liner that we've had. So what that does is it really kind of like tells us just how long we've had to deploy project science or project development over many, many years. And ancient civilizations were able to do this and accomplish great things that we know about in detail. But this has been around for a long time. This concept of project management, even though it's been the last 30 years or so maybe, that we've really got kind of big, it's become really in vogue again to talk about it, and businesses are trying to practice it. It's been around for a long time, so it's not a new science, despite what some people tend to think. Now you could, of course, Google the idea of project management and come up with just this wide sea of plagiarized material out there that's trying to grab content hits on search engines, which may suck you in. Some of it's true, some of it's not. That's the problem with online stuff, as you know. But nevertheless, you can get in there and you can look for that stuff. But I'm going to try to kind of condense that stuff. I got to make it, just as that jumbo jet, the Airbus 380, the largest commercial airliner in the world, jumbo jet, is so big. And it's designed for macro capacity. In other words, it's designed for a lot of people, a lot of payload, a lot of tickets getting sold. But it's not really so maneuverable probably in the sense of say a fighter jet would be. A fighter jet can take really almost dead straight up angle turns, and whereas you wouldn't really probably do that with an Airbus 380. Even if it could do that, you wouldn't want to do that. Probably wouldn't really. It's not really structured for that. It's structured for capacity, and not so much for micro purposes maybe the fighter jet would be. But that's kind of a different thing. If you it's kind of, I think, the same as large jumbo type organizations that we have these days. They are so big and bureaucratic that and sluggish to act. Right now, this week, for example, they're still debating budget issues in Congress, and so people are going to be, they're losing paychecks and things like that. I know some people that are working for the government offices right now that are working based upon the thought of, say, retro pay, that they'll get paid, they believe, but it could be that this isn't solved. They could possibly not get a paycheck, and that would change their lives drastically. So we could say, in a way, is it so big and sluggish that we need small teams, maybe, or smaller subunits of a larger organizational structure or institutional structure in order to get things done? But that's kind of how project management has kind of evolved again, is based upon that idea. Sometimes you need something smaller to accomplish things that the larger organization as a structure can't fix on their own. So you set up these subunits. You recruit these people that are, they tend to have great expertise, and they tend to have be very task-oriented, and they're multi-role players, we'll call them, and different things like that. And if you think back at the pyramids, the pyramids are kind of a good analogy for what I'm talking about, I think, because if you think about a pyramid, it's kind of like a triangular structure where you have kind of the fat bottom and you have the top that kind of hits the tip up there. If you think about it this way, in those large corporate organizations, you might have executive committees that are like a small minority of the organization or the corporation, but and they'll kind of make decisions for the vast majority of the rest of the people that are at, say, at lower levels in the traditional hierarchies that we have in organizations. And so a lot of power rests at the top of that pyramid. And then as you go below that, you might have, say, divisional vice presidents of some sort. Perhaps then you would have territorial managers, regional managers maybe. And below them you might have, say, branch managers, store managers, things like that. And then from there you might have team players maybe that work for those branch managers or report directly to them. And maybe there's foreman people. Maybe there's even another layer in the bureaucracy or the hierarchy there that has to serve other purposes. So that's the traditional idea of organizational hierarchy that we're familiar with probably. But see, project management offices, what they're trying to do is actually kind of isolate themselves somewhat away from that concept of the traditional hierarchy. They're actually trying to go more lateral, in their team, and not be so constrained by what bureaucracy or traditional hierarchies will sometimes make us feel like. Like I say, we often call them bureaucratic because they tend to be sluggish in acting, even though they're necessary to keep things going and legal in organizations for the most part, and institutions as well. So anyway, so we know all those things and all those variables there. But see, in a way, project teams, that's how they're trying to do. They're trying to isolate themselves to be a different structure to get certain things accomplished. Now, in the textbook, the first 3 chapters, you probably read a number of terms and ideas and concepts about this idea of project management. But there's one that I want you to check out. I believe it's on page 14 in the Leading Project Teams book by Cobb. Actually a great book, although, again, I've got to break it down to something a little bit more that I think we can digest or use in our forums. There's a thing on page 14, I think it's called the Baltimore Project. Yeah, here we go. Okay, yeah. It kind of like narrates the project throughout the chapter 2 and breaks it down, kind of analyzes it, and it's a continual narrative. And what I want you to do in this forum, to start us off with, is I want us to kind of figure out why these project management offices are really necessary, if at all, in the first place. And what's the difference between what they do and the other organization, the traditional organizational hierarchy does? Now, I've kind of broke that down a little bit for you, but I'd like to hear what you think based upon what you've read in the book so far and what you may have in personal experience with projects in your organizations. If you worked on project management teams, that'd be awesome to use those references or experiences to really boost our forum activity this week. What I want you to do is on this Baltimore project is look at it and decide to yourself or ask yourself this question: why was it necessary, if at all, in this situation to have a project management office in the first place? Why couldn't the organization solve those problems in its traditional hierarchy or traditional system of governing? Why was that the case? And you need to start with an opinion and use some stuff from the book, and then also use again some scholarly, some external materials. On the course homepage, look at that part. It talks specifically about what a scholarly source is, the difference between that and, say, a commentary or a blog piece or something like that. And you need to carefully look at that and see what that has to say. So you pick a cool source, because you're senior undergraduate folks, and you're kind of probably be heading maybe to graduate school or trying to go a little bit further. And if that's the case, we need to start figuring out what a scholarly source is and what a typical online source is, which could be useful, but not necessarily does it come with a guarantee of expertise. And so it's important for us to distinguish between the two here in class. But anyway, I want you to look at Baltimore Project in there and analyze it, and look at the forum questions I put in the forum that you're probably on the page of right now. And read the instructions that it has about what we're going to do in this forum, and we'll do that. We'll kind of figure out, why is it necessary. If you don't think it was necessary to have a Baltimore project or have a project team for that purpose, argue that. Argue that. Use materials and things that you can get from other things to argue that point, if at all possible. And if so, that would be awesome. That's what we're after, is we want a good sound discussion that's sourced with good materials. That's the real key here. So try to do that. If you need me, call me up or email me one way or the other. As you can tell by these big bags under my eyes, that I'm not really sleeping that much this week. That's usually how it is in online classes. Probably the same for you. And so if you need me, I'll probably be here. I'll probably be awake. But maybe not. I don't really sleep, I guess, but it's the only time I really can't sleep is when I really want to. Maybe you know what that's like. Anyway, have a great week, and take care. Bye.